Welcome to the Macmillan Report. I'm Marilyn Wilkes, your host, and our guest is Domingo Cavallo, an Argentine economist and politician and a senior fellow at Yale's Jackson Institute for Global Affairs. Currently the chairman and CEO of DFC Associates, Mr. Cavallo was Argentina's Minister of Economy from 1991 to 1996 and in 2001. And Minister of Foreign Affairs from 1989 to 1991. He was elected National Congressman on 2 occasions and also served as chairman of the Central Bank of Argentina in 1982. Today we talk with him about Argentina's economy. Welcome, Mr. Cavallo.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Economist Carlos Melconian recently described the Argentine economic situation as a ticking time bomb, despite record highs in terms of consumption and production. What do you think of that characterization?
I think he's right, because this record high level of activity came as a consequence of extremely expansionary monetary and fiscal policies and very favorable external conditions, particularly the most favorable terms of trade for Argentina in all its history. And the government has been implementing pro-cyclical policies, and it has introduced a lot of distortions into the economy by trying to control some prices, has been increasingly using restrictions to imports to protect local industry, and has been taxing agriculture very heavily, and all that has created a situation which is very complicated. Actually, inflation is very high, much higher than what the government says that it is, because actually the government is lying on inflation statistics. Inflation is around 25% per annum, and that is very, very high. And there are many distortions into the economy. Right now, in order to try to keep a trade surplus, the economic authorities have been implementing restrictions to imports and also to payments of dividends and sending money abroad. So all those restrictions will introduce additional distortions, and I think, as Carlos Melconian said, it's a sort of bomb, a time bomb that is in place there, and it may burst at any time.
So do the people of Argentina, because of the production and consumption rates being so good, are they happy with the things that they are, happy with the way things are at this point?
Yes, if you look at the electoral results of, you see that the government gets 54% of support according to the polls. So people looks like being happy with this situation, and there is always a period in which higher and higher inflation looks like good for the people, when the government may authorize wage increases, salary increases, and increases also in nominal pensions. But then when it comes to the moment in which the authorities have to put brakes to prevent the acceleration of inflation, and expansionary fiscal and monetary policy have to be reversed, there will be a recession. And I think at that time people will realize that this was not a sustainable development in Argentina.
Right, right. How big of a problem do you think capital flight is in terms of the economy?
It's a very important problem. Actually, capital flight had been happening since 2007, and so far I think more than $50 billion have from Argentina to the rest of the world. And it's not investment by Argentinian companies abroad, which would be a good development, but it is simply people that feel that they are not secure in Argentina and they move their capital abroad. So that restricts the financing of new investment in Argentina. So it's a big problem.
Right.
And actually the government tries to prevent that by imposing more and more controls on imports and on exportation of capital. But those controls discourage people from keeping their capital in Argentina. So the end result is very bad. Capital flight continues at very high levels.
Okay. And what about the subsidies the current administration is handing out? How is that part of the problem?
Oh yes,
Or
it's a
isn't
big fiscal problem.
Yes, okay.
Part of the fiscal expansion, excessive fiscal expansion, came because the government compensated the public utility freeze or the freeze of public utility rates by paying subsidies to the companies. But that has grown to become a very, very big expenditure item in the budget. And now the government has to reduce that. But, you know, in order to remove those subsidies, it has to let the public utility rates to increase by 100%, 200% in some cases. I mean, water supply, natural gas, electricity, and of course, all those sudden price increases or will impact and will produce additional inflation. No, so that is a big problem. And but the elimination of the subsidies or the reduction of the subsidies is very necessary. Otherwise, the fiscal deficit will become unmanageable. No? So
do you think
it's
that
that is a consequence of wrong policies of the past that are now provoking these effects.
So do you think the government doesn't want to take back the subsidies because the prices are going to go up and then they will lose?
No, but they have started to take back the subsidies gradually. Because they cannot afford anymore to continue paying all these subsidies. The fiscal deficit is already too big. And, but of course, as a consequence of removing the subsidies, there are already, and there will be even more, price increases. No? So that is a problem, but it's something that the government has to do, and a problem it has to face, because it came or it originated in bad policies of the past. No?
Is there a big public outcry because they're doing
that? Oh
yes.
Not so big because until now they have removed the subsidies only for supply of public services in rich neighborhoods. But to the extent that it goes into neighborhoods where the middle classes or the low-income people lives, I think the outcry will be tremendous. Yes.
Right. What about the agricultural business? How big of a role is that playing in the economy?
Oh, it's very important. You know, Argentina was always very rich in natural resources, particularly for agriculture. And until the 50s, Argentina had a very efficient agriculture and export-oriented agriculture. Then, during the Peronist government, and for almost 45 years, from mid-40s until 1990, agriculture was discouraged by heavy taxation and a lot of discrimination. And productivity in agriculture did not expand. And as a consequence, the whole Argentinian economy stagnated. No? And it was, in addition, a period of rapid inflation and eventually hyperinflation. So it was very bad for Argentina, those 45 years. But since the early 90s, by the removal of all the taxes on exports of agriculture products, the opening up of the economy, the stabilization, then there was a revival of agriculture. Productivity increased very rapidly, catched up with productivity in Australia, in Canada, in the United States. So the agriculture sector became again an engine of growth for Argentina. During the 90s, in spite of all this good development, as the international prices were very low, the benefits were not perceived very clearly. But during the last decade, because of the growth in China and the high demand for soy and other agricultural products in China, the terms of trade became very favorable for Argentina. And with that very high productivity in agriculture and agribusiness in general, that became the most important engine of growth of Argentina. No? So agriculture and agrobusiness in general, because it's not only production and farming, but the supply of inputs, all the services that accompany agriculture production, plus the processing of the crops, of the products. All that is a very, very important activity in Argentina. It creates a lot of employment, well distributed in the whole country, not concentrated just in the big cities. So it's, I think if Argentina eliminates inflation, implements good stabilization policies, and eliminate these distortive taxes that unfortunately have been reintroduced, just unleashing the potential that our agribusiness has will provide many, many years of rapid growth for our country.
Okay, so let's talk specifically in terms of this ticking time bomb. So you kind of mentioned some things that would help for that bomb not to go off, and then what does Argentina really need to do in order to keep its economy moving forward?
To stabilize the economy in terms of prices. I mean, right now, because of all the price controls of the past, plus the subsidies, you have just a sort of inertial inflation that comes from the need to adjust all those prices. In addition, the wages and the salaries have been increasing also very rapidly. That pleased the people, but it increased the cost of production in every sector of the economy. The government has been trying to dampen the inflationary effect of all these price and cost increases by controlling the exchange rate, but that it's part of the bomb, the time bomb, because once it cannot control the exchange rate anymore, there may be a sharp devaluation, and that will add to the inflation. So what the government should do is to design and implement a typical stabilization plan, a plan that will put brakes in inflation. For that purpose, it has to tighten monetary policy. For some time, interest rate will have to go up. That will have a recessionary effect. But to the extent that the government sticks to that stabilization policy, like it happened in the United States in the early 80s with Paul Volcker, then after 1 or 2 years, Argentinian inflation will be down, most prices will have been liberalized, markets will start operating again in a reasonable way, and if all these distortive taxes are removed, and at the same time government spending is reduced because the elimination of all those subsidies, the economy may become an unstable economy again, as it was during the 90s, with very low inflation. And all this potential that I described coming from agrobusiness and other important activities in which Argentina has comparative advantage and is efficient, Argentina may grow out of the crisis and enjoy very good times ahead. No? But inevitably, Argentina needs to address the inflationary problem and to remove all these distortions, and all that will for sure provoke something like a burst and then a recession, and only with good stabilization policies it will succeed in finding the way out in a sustainable way.
Do you think the current administration recognizes that there is a ticking time bomb?
No, unfortunately, it's not recognizing it. The worst part of the current administration is that they have been lying and continue lying. The very fact that they say that the inflation rate is 9% when inflation is actually 25% per annum means a big problem, because the government cannot recognize that it has a problem. And if you do not recognize that you have a problem, for sure you will not find easy ways out of that problem. That is mainly a political problem that we face in Argentina.
So what do you think is going to happen?
No, I think that reality will force the government to introduce the necessary adjustment. I am not very optimist in the terms of the ability of the government to design a good stabilization program that will minimize the costs and will maximize the probabilities of success. But if reality forces the government to adopt difficult decisions like the complete removal of the subsidies, maybe the realignment of the exchange rate and all that, once the government sees that that is inevitable, will work hard to try to design a good stabilization program. I don't know, that is maybe wishful thinking, but one has always to leave the door open for good policies.
Right. Well, thank you very much for being here with us today and sharing some of your work.
Okay, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you. For more information about Mr. Cavallo, please visit our website at yale.edu/Macmillan Report. Be sure to join us again for another episode of the Macmillan Report, made possible through funding from the Whitney and Betty Macmillan Center for International and Area Studies at Yale.